In this episode, we're going to be talking about a topic that is becoming increasingly important for those of us who work in pharma, and that is established conditions and ICH Q12. Now, we've covered regulatory guidance and quality systems extensively on this show, but I think ICH is one of those things that really brings it all together in terms of how established conditions, post-approval changes, and life cycle management really mend together. ICH Q12 focuses on the life cycle management of pharma products, and it specifically calls out drug device combination products as well, those that are considered a drug in terms of regulatory designation. In other words, drugs that have a device component. So it's a bridge that connects development, manufacturing, post-approval changes in a way that is more consistent and predictable. Q12 builds on previous guidelines, particularly ICH Q8 through Q10, Q8 being the pharmaceutical development process, Q9 being quality risk management, which we've talked about in the past, quality risk management versus 14971 and how they relate are in some ways different, and ICH Q10, which is the pharma quality system, which most of us are familiar with. The difference though is ICH Q12 goes beyond development or manufacturing. It really emphasizes continuity between a product's entire life cycle. For combination products, obviously there's an added complexity as you're not only managing the drug product, but you're also managing the device component and their requirements and expectations. So why should we in pharma, or we in specifically combination products, care about Q12? A lot of it comes down to post-approval changes, but I think beyond that, philosophically, we should care about it because it just enhances making sure we understand what our product is. The phrase post-approval change, most people's lexicon or most people's experience brings up memory of lengthy regulatory submissions, unpredictable timelines, and potentially product availability issues. For me, my first change that I handled straight out of college was what I felt was a relatively minor labeling change, but ended up taking a year to add in some new ISO symbols. And so post-approval changes often carry a lot of baggage for most people. And ICH Q12 introduces tools that help streamline that process in a way that I think is pretty thoughtful. So it's all based on an establishment and alignment of established conditions, which are abbreviated as ECs. ECs are the critical parameters in manufacturing or quality. CISPQ is often the acronym that's used to edge out all of the really important elements that quality expectations must meet to demonstrate GMP, and that's safety, identity, strength, potency, and quality. By defining these parameters up front, one can avoid unnecessary regulatory submissions later on for minor changes, saving time, effort, money, resources. There are three concepts that I really wanted to break down in this video, and those are the three, I think, big ones out of Q12, which are: what are established conditions? What do they mean by product life cycle management, or PLCM? And post-approval change management protocols, or PACMPs. So starting with established conditions, these are the critical elements of your process or product that must be maintained for regulatory compliance. By identifying these established conditions, you can draw a clear line between which changes can be handled internally or which changes require regulatory involvement and submission and approval. The product lifecycle management document, in second, is a roadmap for managing a life cycle of a product. It details how changes will be managed from approval to end of life. Obviously, for a combo product, a PLCM document should establish alignment between how drug and device related changes are addressed. And then finally, PACMPs or post-approval change management protocols allow you to define a predefined plan for managing specific post-approval changes if you already know that a certain change might be needed down the line, like a supplier update or something that is related to scale up or something like that. A PACMP lets you pre-agree with the regulator on what is the data required to ensure a smooth approval path. Now, I think examples really help. So now let's paint a hypothetical and bring a quick example to life. So imagine that there is a product that's been on the market for a number of years. You identify a more efficient component for the device. Now, let's take an example. A product that's been on the market for a number of years, let's say, is found to have an inefficiency in the process, and you identify a component or a process change that would help deal with that inefficiency in the process. Without ICH Q12, this might require a full submission, making you wait months for regulatory feedback. But with ICH Q12 as a framework, you might be able to make this change internally if it's unrelated to your established conditions. Alternatively, if it is related to your established conditions, you know that you have an understanding that there is some kind of regulatory submission that's needed. And with the PACMP, if that change is already expected, you can have it pre-approved, letting you move forward without interrupting your production scale-up commercialization activities. And I think that's where the true power of ICHQ lies, because it gives you that flexibility while making sure that the regulatory confidence and that the appropriate oversight is still in place. In terms of benefits and challenges, I think the benefits of Q12 are very clear. Fewer regulatory submissions, faster implementation of changes, a flexible approach to lifecycle management. Added benefit for combo products is that you can have a more predictable way of commercialization, which obviously improves patient access and the reliability for products. But I think the challenge in implementing Q12 requires that you have a quality system that can handle it. In other words, with combination products specifically, we talk about it all the time, that the difficulty is in the alignment of terminology. So if you have critical process parameters or critical quality attributes or key design characteristics or key process characteristics or critical dimensions and so on and so forth, these things all add up. And reconciling which of those things are established conditions and which of those are not, ensuring that documentation allows for very clear definition on what those are, and that once aligned with regulatory, that they're very much under lock and key and controlled. I think that's a challenge that, it's not even a challenge, it's just something that is a consideration to make sure that there's alignment there before any kind of implementation on ICH Q12. And then also the life cycle management, ensuring that change procedures and SOPs are aligned for your general change control versus design changes on that. I think it's really important to familiarize yourself with the guidance. Obviously, I say this all the time, my goal with this channel is mastery. And so if it's one thing that I can get you to do is to just open up ICH Q12 and get a flavor of what they're trying to say, open up the FDA guidance on ICH Q12 and understand what they're trying to say. I'll link them in the show notes. And if you're involved in LCM or regulatory, I think it's really important to understand, how does PLCM or PACMPs integrate into the product development process? Is a PLCM a document that is generated whenever a product is in development, such that there's a forward thinking that happens and it's an approved document that aligns drug and device stakeholders and ensures that management of changes in readiness for commercialization, but also post-market, are dealt with in a way that's efficient and aligned with internal expectations? So to close, I think ICH Q12 represents this wide shift that we're seeing in industry towards flexible, life cycle oriented approaches that allow for the appropriate oversight appropriate oversight by regulators while ensuring that there's thoughtful definition and product understanding on the sponsor company side. I think by understanding and applying ICH Q12, it's going to drive an improvement in streamlining product lifecycle development, reducing regulatory frictions, and allowing for faster access. Like I said, if you're excited about ICH Q12 like I am, I'd encourage you to read it in detail. It'll be in the show notes. And if you have any questions or insights about the show, feel free to reach out to me at letscombinate.com or on the LinkedIn page. And don't forget to hit subscribe on the YouTube channel if you've... And with that, I'll see you next time. Thanks, everybody.